Hello, dear folks, my dear audiences. Welcome to the show, Jack Chow on East to West with G&E TV. Well, if you recall, about 2-3 weeks ago, we paid lots of attention about what happened with the church shooting in South Carolina, and the conversation was for a bit, quite a bit, stretched to a area of gun control. Talk. There was even one debate between two gentlemen that I host. I was sitting in the middle talking about the issue though. Well, I don't think the topic was discussed to depth. So I didn't give up. I went one step further, and I want to still go forward to find out more in the issue though. Today, joining me is a good friend of mine, Mr. William Brown, attorney at law, to share his views, to shed light on this very issue. I would say, Mr. Brown, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
All right, very good. And I'm so glad that you appear to be the old style, the professional style. So that shows how serious you look at this issue. You take as towards this discussion, right? So
yes.
I'm so flattered for being a host, hosting you of that kind of style. So anyway, it is the conversation, it is the content of the conversation that counts. So we want to make it clear to our audiences that we try our best by putting the knowledge of possibly everybody together to get to the very, very core of the issue. Though. Okay, my first response after hearing that incident, though, is gun control. I thought about it. I tried to put lots of different brains to it, though. But I have a rebound. I kind of like hit a brick wall. The rebound is so strong. My friend, there's one friend of mine, I know him for many, many years. He says his first response was that he stood 100% for the protection, for the defense of Constitution, Amendment 2. So is there a contradiction between? My question.
I don't think that there is a contradiction between the two, because the question that you're talking about here is public safety and protecting the public. And that's one of the primary roles of our government, is to protect the population and keep them safe. And another important role of government, in fact, the most important role that some people would say, is to protect our freedom. And so you have a balance between freedom and safety in society. And that's why this is such a touchy issue, because people want both of those things, and there's a balancing point that you have to have between freedom and safety. And what the Constitution does is it lays out certain protections for our freedom that you don't want to go beyond. And that's why when somebody comes up with the Second Amendment as an argument as to why we shouldn't have those certain laws, that's why you have such a heated debate, because people are feeling like their safety is being compromised.
Sure. Okay, sure, of course, that's seriously understood. I believe my audience will understand that as an easy first layer, right?
Yes.
But on the second layer, though, the issue is that if you talk about freedom, you're talking about a larger subject, which seems to be less tangible as versus your own safety in the community. You could be killed next minute. Smaller issue as versus the bigger issue, though, but more tangible.
Yes.
Right? So these two, in other words, the relationship in between the defense of our freedom and the defense of our right to live safe, right? So are they contradicting to each other?
I don't think they're contradicting, but they definitely are in tension with one another. And it's a trade-off. If you elect officials who are going to pass laws and they're going to restrict your freedom, you might become uncomfortable with it, or it might restrict freedom too much, and then society might decide, gee, maybe we want a little more freedom, but we're going to give up a little more risk. The same way. I mean, it's the same way with the speed limit. Some people want to have the freedom to be able to drive 120 miles an hour, but society has decided, gee, we want to, here's a nice balance where we want to have it be a little more safe. If you remember back in the 1970s, they lowered the speed limit nationwide down to 55 miles an hour.
55, yes.
Yes, and they said it was going to save gas and it was going to make make everyone more safe. And certainly it did those things, but society was uncomfortable with that. They didn't like it, and it also made a lot of people simply ignore the law. And so what happened is society got together and they said, gee, we're willing to give up a little bit of the safety in response for the freedom that we have. And so society did that, and our Congress and legislatures decided different things. In different areas, they have different speed limits. In some places, I think you can go 75, and other places it's less in different states, depending on where they are.
That could be very much a vivid example as to be reference of the issue we're talking about.
Yes.
So you're talking, of course, once again, you're talking about your freedom and the safety.
Yes.
Right? So you're safer at 55, but it costs you more, take a longer time, using more of the surface and even on the freeway conditions, whatever. And then you go anything higher than 75, for example, and you're increasing your safety maybe by double the amount, whatever.
Yes.
And then they came to a silver cut, right? Or silver lining or something like that, called the gold lining, whatever. So why can't we do the same thing using the same concept, find a silver lining in between the amendment number 2
Yes.
and our gun control issue? So is there a possibility?
I think that is, and some people would argue that's exactly where we are right now, because there's an awful lot of gun control laws that exist right now, both on the federal and state level, and even local restrictions on guns that exist out there. There's only certain areas that the Second Amendment has said that you can't go beyond. But there's a lot of restrictions that the courts have interpreted it as being consistent with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment doesn't say that they can't make any law. It just says that they can't abridge the right to bear arms. And the courts have looked at that and interpreted that, and there's been a lot of room for restrictions on guns that have been upheld.
Sure. And of course, Mr. Brown, back a little bit. Last night, I redid my study of the Declaration of Independence. Every time I redid it, I had different feelings about it. I learned more from it, the whole thing. Very lengthy, the whole thing though. I do not think that is the timepiece. That's a timeless piece, because it stays there forever, no matter we move ourselves to cell phone age, to something or like Mars traveling age, whatever.
Sure.
And that constitute that foundation stays there. Yet to Constitution though, when you talk about gun control or guns, at the time when we made that amendment, we had different guns.
Correct.
And now we're talking about, well, more advanced, more sophisticated guns, right? So it's an evolution we're talking about. So when you were in law school, though, did you have an area talking about the law evolution, and then law evolution versus to Constitution evolution?
Yes.
Is there such a term or such a possibility?
Yes, exactly. And when I was in law school, you didn't spend much time on the Second Amendment. It wasn't really a popular thing to talk about. There have been some more cases recently in 2008 and 2010 that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And so there was more activity in the Supreme Court. But the Second Amendment pretty much said what it said, that well-regulated militia, being a part of a well-ordered society, that the right to bear arms would not be restricted. And the question that you've asked is the arms that a militia would use back in 1789 and the arms that a militia would use today are very different arms. In cases that have come up before the courts, that same argument has been made, and some people have said, well, what a militia is using now are tanks and mortars and drones and things of that nature, and therefore the Second Amendment, some people have looked at it and said what that does is it allows the states to have their militia and have the weaponry they need for their militia, and that the federal government can't keep the states from doing that. And they've made that argument. But The Supreme Court has looked at it, and the Supreme Court in 2008, a decision from the District of Columbia, they said, no, the Second Amendment is meant to actually give rights to individuals. And so each individual has a right to have certain arms. Now, the states are allowed to make laws to restrict that somewhat.
Let's pause right there. Now we have two definitions, the militia and the individual.
Yes.
Right? So are they the same body, or are they the different bodies, or are A included in B, or B included in A? When we take a short moment out and we come back, we'll continue talking about it. Thank you very much, my dear audience, for watching, and stay with us. You'll get more. We'll tell you more. All right, stay with us.